Life is Strange is one of my favorite game franchises, with the first game being developed by Don't Nod Entertainment and its prequel Before the Storm being developed by Deck 9 Games, and both being published by Square Enix. The series isn't super gameplay intensive, as the bulk of the gameplay involves character interaction, decision making, and even the occasional puzzle, but the story is really engaging, the characters are complex, the art style is lovely, the music is incredible, and the majority of the decisions you make actually have some kind of tangible effect, major or minor, on the entire world around you. The original Life is Strange centers around Max Caulfield, an aspiring photographer who comes back to her old hometown of Arcadia Bay, Oregon, to attend Blackwell Academy, but one day, after witnessing a tragic event, Max discovers that she has the ability to rewind time. The whole rewind mechanic that's central to the gameplay of Life is Strange is actually something of a carryover from a game that Don't Nod had developed beforehand called Remember Me, in which the main character can use an ability called Memory Remix to manipulate the memories of specific people. In Life is Strange, it's a little bit different though, because Max Caulfield isn't just changing what people think happened, she's changing what actually happened before, and what could happen in the future. Early on in the story, she also reunites with her childhood friend, Chloe Price, and vows to help her discover the whereabouts of a missing girl called Rachel Amber, all while dealing with terrifying visions of Arcadia Bay being wiped out by a massive storm. Throughout the game's story, Max has to learn how to use her new rewind power to discover what happened to Rachel, to try and keep her best friend alive, and to try and save her town from being destroyed, so, you know, no pressure. With the announcement from a couple months ago of a new game in the series entitled True Colors that's coming out this fall, as well as remasters of the original game and the prequel, I thought this would be a good time to head back to Arcadia Bay to include 5 of the characters from the original game in the What If series. So, grab your old school instant cameras and try not to destroy the space-time continuum just to find some dirty old bottles, as I tell you what I think it'd be like if Life is Strange characters were Pokemon trainers. Oh, and just in case you haven't played the first Life is Strange or the prequel Before the Storm yet, big time heckin' spoilers ahead! Let's start things off with Max's old childhood friend, and probably the most visually recognizable character from the game, Chloe Price. Voiced by Ashley Birch in the first game and by Rihanna DeVries in Before the Storm, Chloe is a blue-haired punk rock girl who doesn't care for much beyond getting high, rocking out, and pissing off her uber-strict stepfather. She often acts fearless and outgoing and is prone to taking risks that often get her into trouble, but she also has a tendency to be insensitive, irrational, anxious, and insecure. That tough, abrasive front likely just a shield to keep herself from getting hurt after what she's experienced in her life. Chloe and Max were best friends when the two of them were younger, but her father William was killed in a tragic car accident, and Max's family moved away to Seattle almost immediately afterwards. That traumatic 1-2 punch left Chloe feeling abandoned, and she began to shut most everyone out. She went from a bright, happy person to being sarcastic, stubborn, and irresponsible, letting her once stellar grades plummet as she began to care less and less about most things and most people. A chance encounter with a mysterious Rachel Amber seemed to be a light in the darkness for her though, as she would later credit Rachel with having saved her life, going so far as to tell Max that Rachel was her angel. She and Rachel had planned to leave Arcadia Bay altogether to go to Los Angeles before Rachel's mysterious disappearance 6 months prior to the events of the original game. Ironically, the apparent loss of Rachel Amber was followed closely by a reunion with the very person whose place in her life Rachel had filled, Max Caulfield, as the two were reunited around the same time Max discovers her rewind power, and although she doesn't exactly give Max a ton of slack for not keeping in touch for the entire 5 years she was in Seattle, over time, Chloe begins to soften up and grow as a person, thanks to Max's support and willingness to call Chloe out on her bullshit, resulting in Chloe becoming a bit less selfish and resentful by the story's end, which does tend to make that final choice all the more difficult. What? I said there'd be spoilers. Thankfully though, all we're doing here is figuring out what Pokemon would be on our hypothetical team, so let's start off with an aesthetic pick, Toxtricity. Something that fits perfectly with Chloe's punk rock style, not to mention its half-poison typing is pretty appropriate, given that Chloe does admittedly possess some toxic traits. Next, I think Chloe would have a Banette, a Pokemon whose very existence is driven by resentment and holding grudges, specifically stemming from abandonment, which fits pretty well given that that Chloe tends to hold grudges against people that she feels abandoned her. After that, let's go with an Absol, a Pokemon perfect for someone who's convinced that their entire life is disastrous. And lastly, I'm gonna go with a Vivian, specifically the marine pattern form. See, many characters in the Life is Strange series have an animal that they're thematically associated with, and for Chloe, that would be a blue butterfly, which shows up many times throughout the original game's story, including mere moments before the first time Chloe dies and Max discovers her rewind power. Not to mention that the marine pattern fits pretty well aesthetically, and it's pretty appropriate because Arcadia Bay is a town by the sea. The blue butterfly is actually pretty central to the themes of the game overall, since it implements a pretty on-the-nose interpretation of the whole butterfly effect theory, emphasized further by the butterfly symbol that appears every time Max makes a major decision in the game's story, accompanied by the phrase, "This action will have consequences." You know what else would have consequences? The decision to like and comment on a YouTube video just like this one. I mean, you know, you could always choose not to do those things, but, like, the whole butterfly effect stemming from that choice could be the difference between world peace and, I don't know, the Earth being swallowed by a black hole or something. Personally, I wouldn't take that risk. Now let's move on from one of the most outwardly expressive people in Arcadia Bay to one of the most quiet and reserved, Kate Marsh. Voiced by Diane Hutton, Kate Marsh is one of Max's classmates in Mark Jefferson's photography class and, according to Max, is usually friendly and shy but quite devoted to her faith. She's also a practicing violinist and a lover of tea. However, in the first half of the game, we could see her being bullied relentlessly by the likes of Victoria Chase and her minions, apparently stemming from some viral video that she was in without her knowledge. Whatever the contents of that video were, it was not only enough to make her even more quiet and introverted than usual, but that, combined with the harassment and bullying she was experiencing, and the lack of help and understanding from those around her, drove her to a really desperate place. But Max does have the ability to save her and provide her with the friendship and the support that she needs, and Kate, for her part, remains an irreplaceable friend and even an occasionally helpful ally in Max and Chloe's search for the truth. For Kate's Pokemon team, I think we'll start off with a Blissey, described in its Pokedex entries as having a compassionate nature, a perfect representation of Kate's own compassion and kindness, being able to try and see the good inside almost anyone, even Victoria Chase, the person who was at the forefront of harassing Kate over that video. Next up, let's go with a Togekiss, a Pokemon who only tends to appear where there's no strife or conflict, kinda like how Kate Marsh herself just wants to attend school and practice her faith, without getting caught up in a swirling vortex of drama and turmoil. After that, we'll go with a Sinistea, a pretty simple pick to represent Kate and Max's regular tea dates, and Kate's desire to go on a tour of various tea shops in Portland sometime in the near future. And lastly, we'll give her a Scorbunny, to represent Alice, the white rabbit that Kate keeps as a pet, and that Max is responsible for taking care of after the end of episode 2. Now, I know some of you might be wondering why, at least compared to other teams I've put together for this series, why Kate has such a relatively non-combative team, but that's who Kate Marsh is. She's not looking for trouble, she's not looking to pick fights or preach to anyone. She just wants to live her life, drink some tea, and pet her cute rabbit. Is that too much to ask? I don't think so. Hashtag Kate Marsh Protection Squad. But now I think we need to talk a bit more about the girl around whom both the original game and the prequel revolves, the mysterious and captivating Rachel Amber. In the original Life is Strange, Rachel Amber never actually appears in person, being spoken about only in the third person by other people that knew her, essentially acting as the Heather Sinclair of Blackwell Academy. Of course, you'll know very early on what she looks like, given the litany of missing persons posters that Chloe Price plastered on seemingly every surface in Arcadia Bay. The image you would get of her as an actual person is a bit more muddled, though. Chloe describes her as an angel, and Blackwell student Hayden Jones describes her as fun to be around while she was in the Vortex Club parties, but Chloe's mother Joyce called Rachel a hellraiser, and Nathan Prescott would say that she even partied like a fiend on her own, regardless of others in the Vortex Club. In Before the Storm, where we actually get to see and interact with Rachel, as voiced by Kylie Brown, we get to see even more aspects of Rachel as a person. She was an avid and ambitious student, even assisting Principal Wells during first period to some degree, while also taking part in the school's drama club, landing a major role in Blackwell's production of Shakespeare's The Tempest. Rachel and Chloe's relationship is complicated, to say the least. Rachel showed a great deal of kindness and caring towards Chloe, but was also quick to anger when things didn't go her way, causing her to engage in impulsive and sometimes destructive actions that Chloe would end up getting caught in the middle of, and some people in Chloe's life seem to only see the negative aspects of Rachel. However you view Rachel Amber and what she had with Chloe Price though, it's clear that Rachel was probably the one last bright spot in an otherwise terrible and dark place in Chloe's life, and the thought of losing her forever, like she had with so many others, was something that Chloe just couldn't fathom. After all, as Chloe herself has the possibility to say in Before the Storm Episode 1, when you meet someone who's going to change your life, you just know it. Let's start off Rachel's Pokemon team with a Kecleon, whose signature ability color change is a great representation of how Rachel was so many different things to so many different people, to the point where, in episode 5 of the original game, Mark Jefferson describes her as a human chameleon. Of course, Rachel herself, in Before the Storm, laments that maybe she's been acting for so long that she's not even sure who she even is as a person anymore. I mean, she says she was talking about her district attorney father in that moment, but was she really? Next up, let's give her a Drampa, which not only represents the dragon tattoo that she has on her right calf, one of the main identifying features listed on her missing persons poster, but also its berserk ability could be a solid reference to Rachel's occasional angry outbursts. After that, she'll have a Pyroar, a perfect reference to Rachel's insistence, both in Before the Storm and in a letter that she wrote that you can find in the original game, on referring to her astrological zodiac sign as a Leo, an animal that, according to said zodiac, is heavily associated with fire, an element to which Rachel is heavily thematically linked. And finally, we're gonna round out Rachel's team with a Tornadus, a Pokemon who, according to the Pokedex, has the power to control winds strong enough to knock over houses, a reference to the popular fan theory that the storm that's set to destroy Arcadia Bay in Life is Strange is somehow connected directly to Rachel herself, with Chloe even going so far as to theorize that it's Rachel's revenge, a lashing out of anger and pain for all the things that happened to her in Arcadia Bay. In fact, it's pretty heavily theorized in general among fans that Rachel had some sort of superpower, namely control over wind and or fire, supported by the end of Before the Storm Episode 1, where Rachel lets out a loud scream that suddenly causes the flames in a trash can to spread to a nearby tree, and again to cause those flames to start a full-fledged forest fire at an accelerated rate. And on top of that, after Rachel gets stabbed in Episode 3 and taken to a hospital, Chloe can pass by a couple of firefighters sitting in the ER, baffled to discover that, right around the time that Rachel got stabbed, the massive fire consuming the entire park just mysteriously went out. Now, I don't know for sure if Rachel does have superpowers or not, but if she does, and conjuring a massive storm at the end of the original game that's gonna wipe out Arcadia Bay is meant to be her revenge from beyond the grave, considering that she was drugged, used as a subject for creepy photographs, overdosed, and then buried in a junkyard, you know, I could probably think of worse reasons. Now let's take a step back here and talk about one of the less prominent but still fascinating characters in Life is Strange, Samuel Taylor. Voiced by Derek Phillips in the original and Kelly McCracken in the prequel, Samuel is Blackwell Academy's resident custodian, cleaning up messes, painting windows, maintaining sprinklers, you know, just the usual maintenance stuff. He actually plays very little, if any, direct role in the actual plot. The thing that makes him so fascinating, though, is that he speaks in a way that's very wise and sagacious, especially for someone that some would assume wouldn't know much about anything at all, given his job as a simple janitor. But indeed, Samuel is a wise and worldly man, offering great insight and advice to both Max Caulfield in the original game and Chloe Price in his one appearance in Before the Storm, only giving that glimpse of his untapped wisdom to those who are actually willing to take the time to listen. To start off Samuel's Pokemon team, we'll give him both an Alolan Muck and a Chinchino. Both of these are Pokemon whose evolutionary lines are used quite often by the Janitor Trainer class, with the former being a Pokemon that eats garbage, and the latter's pre-evolution, Minchino, often using its tail to sweep and clean. Not to mention that Chinchino itself styles its fur in a way that resembles fancy scarves, which could be a reference to the various fashion items that Samuel keeps in his custodial room. Next up, we'll give him a Slowking, a Pokemon that, despite its appearance and the dim-witted reputation of its evolutionary family, is actually incredibly intelligent, a perfect representation of how Samuel himself, despite what people may think of him, seems to know much more about the students of Blackwell, about Rachel Amber, her and about the strangeness of Arcadia Bay at large than most people would probably give him credit for. And lastly, I cannot make a team for Samuel without giving him a Pachirisu, representing Samuel's unbreakable bond with the local squirrel population. Seriously, it's to the point where, in Max's nightmare in episode 5, when she gets to the point where everyone is in the Two Whales diner, begging Max not to let the town get destroyed and pleading for their lives, Samuel's only concern is that Max not let the squirrels die. And listen, I know Sword and Shield have come and gone and we have Squavin and Greedent now, but if I'm gonna go with any squirrel Pokemon, it has got to be the one that won a VGC World Championship, right? And last, but certainly not least, it's the protagonist of the original Life is Strange, the photography-loving, selfie-taking, crunchy peanut butter-hating, everyday hero of Blackwell Academy, Max Caulfield. Voiced by Hannah Tell, Max Caulfield is the main character in the first game, back in Arcadia Bay after 5 years in Seattle. Geeky, self-conscious, introverted, and more than a little hesitant to actually involve herself in the goings-on of Blackwell, Max soon discovers the ability to rewind time, a power she immediately puts to use, both to save her former best friend Chloe Price from certain death, and to get around her own social awkwardness. She's also plagued with visions of the future, in which she constantly sees the massive storm that's set to wipe out Arcadia Bay and everyone in it at the end of the week, resolving to use her new powers to find a way to stop it, as well as to help Chloe discover the whereabouts of Rachel Amber. Of course, that doesn't mean she takes the weight of her new powers lightly, but even she doesn't quite see the possible consequences of many of her rewind-driven choices until it's almost too late. If there's a definite upside to her journey, though, it's that she definitely gains more confidence and becomes more decisive as the story goes on, thanks to both her rewind powers and likely the influence of her outgoing and oftentimes impulsive best friend Chloe, displaying a bravery and selflessness that causes her to travel through multiple realities and nearly break time and space apart, all to save Chloe's life. And trust me, you have to be brave to think that Final Fantasy The Spirits Within is actually a good movie. Seriously, Max, be honest, is that $200 gift certificate actually from your mom, or was that a little incentive from somebody at Square Enix? Anyway, let's start off Max's Pokemon team with probably the most obvious choice, a Celebi, a Pokemon with the ability to travel through time to represent Max's various time-related powers. Next up, I'm gonna go with a Sawsbuck, representing the Spirit Doe that appears to Max several times throughout the game to serve as a guide, and I'm gonna go with the Autumn form specifically, due to an entry in Max's journal that indicates that autumn is her favorite time of year. After that, we'll go with a Klefki, whose magician ability could reference how Max is able to use her rewind powers to obtain specific items and keep them on her person, while still rewinding everything else to the point from before she took it, so no one's any the wiser. Not to mention that Klefki could be a nice nod to Max's general resourcefulness, being able to use things in her environment to get around various obstacles and roadblocks. And finally, I'm gonna go with a Gardevoir, a Pokemon whose Pokedex entries state that it can see the future and will give its life to protect its trainer, much like how Max has visions of the storm throughout the story, and goes through multiple timelines and realities to protect Chloe and try to make things better for her, at one point even going so far as to say that Chloe was all that matters to her. And honestly, Gardevoir's evolution from a Pokemon like Ralts, which is noted for its shyness and tendency to hide from people who harbor hostility, into a Pokemon willing to lay down its own life for those it cares about, is a lovely nod to Max's own evolution from a shy cliché geek to a true everyday hero. Or, you know, at least into someone who's brave enough to just walk up and do this to a drug dealer in a diner.
You eat like a pig. Try the floor.
I was eating those beans. Are you fucking insane? I was eating those beans! Ugh. Ugh.
Yeah, good thing there's a rewind prompt there, because I would not want to be the Max that gets left behind in this timeline. But now I want to hear from you guys. What Pokemon do you think these characters from Life is Strange would have on their teams? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to give this video a like if you liked it, subscribe for more in the future, share this on your favorite social medias, and ring the bell so you'll always get notified when I upload. And no, don't worry, having my videos pop up in your subfeed won't have any space-time continuum destroying consequences. You know, at least that I'm aware of. Alright, thanks for watching everybody. See you in the next video, friendos.